Hi everyone, we're back with you for the second of our EV technology presentations. This one from Dr. John Miller, who is Global COO of ZPN Energy, and he's going to be talking to us about charging in progress, the risks of continuing to install non-rapid charge points versus rapid chargers as the number of EVs increase. John, over to you.
Thanks, Alex. Good morning, everyone. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. Sorry, I'm struggling with the chart. Hold on. Technical glitch, but we got there in the end. So really not sure how many of the attendees are old enough to remember the Gallagher brothers and Oasis. But some time ago, 1995, they had a massive hit with a song called She's Electric. And I just find it a little bit ironic that almost 30 years later, we're talking about electric as the main focus of discussion. Those of you that remember the Gallagher brothers, you would never ever describe them as visionaries. So that just for me adds to the irony. Just bear with me. So we've seen similar versions of this chart throughout the day and a half, really just to emphasize that most of the greenhouse gas emissions are coming from transport, 27%. That's the area we need to attack. That's what we've been discussing for a day and a half, but I wouldn't discount residential at 15 and business at 17. They are also going to be key for us to get to our 2050 target, and I will just touch upon that a little bit later in the presentation. So this clearly shows, and again, we've seen similar charts throughout the day and a half. This shows the increase in uptake of electric vehicles. In November last year, it was 1 in 5 new vehicles sold were electric vehicles. As it happens, one of the presenters, I think yesterday, mentioned in December, it was actually 1 in 4. So we can argue 1 in 5 or 1 in 4, but we can all agree this is only going one way, and the numbers of electric vehicles will increase, and will increase significantly. So this signals a positive step towards the carbon zero future. But if you look at the number of electric vehicles that have been sold last year, it's still only 8% of the total worldwide vehicles sold. So this needs to accelerate. By 2030. We need that to be at least 2/3 of the global car sales, and 100% by 2050. Many of the investors that are looking at this market space are assuming it's going to be a straight line, similar to the acceleration of the Tesla. I don't believe it will be a nice, smooth, straight line, and I think if you've listened to a number of the presentations that have already gone before, clearly we still have a number of challenges to meet. The elephant in the room. If you look below, so we've talked about how exciting high technology electric vehicles are to drive, without a shadow of a doubt. However, if you look beyond that, there is a massive bottleneck that is with us now, has been reinforced by a number of people, and will actually only increase unless we do something, a stepwise change. Government's waking up to the problem. We heard from a couple of the government ministers yesterday. But the question is, how will we be able to charge all of these electric vehicles? That's the challenge. And how can we expand the charging network at minimal cost? Somebody has to pay for it, but ultimately it has to be sustainable. So we need to look at how that's financed, and who rolls out the delivery of the charging network. This is a slightly busy chart, but it really just uses it to emphasize the differences across the country in terms of electric vehicles to charger ratio. You've got London in a nice position at 10:1, and you've got other ones, the Northwest at 49:1. Clearly a massive discrepancy. In early 2021, we had the Competition and Market Authority warned us that finding a place to charge electric vehicles had become a lot easier. The numbers here say that could be true, but not in all regions. We had Grant Sharps respond by pledging to make the charging of electric vehicles as easy as filling up at the petrol station. We're certainly not there yet, although I was encouraged to hear the presentation from the Shell gentleman yesterday about the service station that they've revamped in the Fulham Road. Very impressive, but it's one, and we need many more. The chargers they're not keeping pace with the volume of electric vehicles. That's clear. I don't think that's disputable. And as I said, massive variations across the country which have to be dealt with. Most of the devices being installed, in my opinion, are inadequate in both the charging time and rates, and will become very quickly obsolete in terms of meeting the charging capacity of the new electric vehicles when they come on. In fact, analysis by the RAC showed that 75% of new chargers are ironically called fast chargers, but they only deliver a charge between 7 and 22 kilowatts per hour, meaning that you're going to take, I don't know, an hour plus to give yourself a decent charge. Everybody's time is very important. I'm not sure that will be sustainable in the future. Only 1 in 4 electric vehicle chargers installed last year allows for rapid charging within half an hour, which I think is the minimum target we need to be aiming for. The RAC warned that installing a high proportion of the slower chargers could actually lead to queues, and we've heard about availability of the charge points and how difficult it is to actually find a charge point as and when you need one that's working. So of the 26,000 chargers currently operating in the UK, fewer than 1 in 5 are rapid or ultra rapid chargers, and we believe the drive towards rapid and ultra rapid is vital if we're to succeed in this challenge. Motorway charging has also been touched upon. There are around 400 chargers currently in place at UK motorway service stations, but the majority of these require you to be plugged in for about an hour or so plus to add something like 150, 200 miles to your range, depending on your car. In 2020, the government said it wanted there to be at least 6 ultra rapid charging points at every motorway service station in the UK by 2023. Under the government's own definition, ultra rapid chargers deliver between 150 to 350 kilowatts per hour. Again, depending on your car, and they're capable of adding about 100 miles to your range and within about 10 minutes of charging. So yeah, stopping at the service station and having a bite to eat or a coffee and waiting an hour might be suitable for some people. I would offer up another view that there are also a number of us that might just want to stop for 10 minutes, get charged and head on again. So there are 158 service stations in the country if you count both north and south carriageways. Even at the lower end of the government's ambitious target, this would equate to there being nearly 1,000 ultra-rapid charging points on the UK motorway network in just over 12 months' time. That seems unlikely. I hope I'm wrong, but that seems unlikely. As of last month, there were fewer than 100. Part of the problem is the electric highway. now owned by GridServe, has exclusive rights to operate rapid charging points at nearly 2/3 of the UK's service stations. Some of these agreements are valid until 2023. They only extend to the main parking area at service stations rather than the petrol forecourts themselves. However, installing chargers on forecourts can be tricky because of space constraints and safety concerns. Although Shell has demonstrated again with the Fulham Road redevelopment that it is highly possible. In November, the Competition and Markets Authority looked into these arrangements. They concluded long-term exclusive arrangements can be justified in certain circumstances, including to support investments in nascent sectors, which sounds fair enough, absolutely. But in a market study published in July, the CMA also said several competitors have told us they would look to enter and compete in motorway services, but are prevented by these long-term exclusivity agreements. So the two statements kind of contradict one another, in my view. Either the agreements are needed to spur investment, or they're actually holding back investment. You know, it's got to be one of them. Can't really be both. Between 16 and 21, Ecotricity installed very few new chargers. Since GridServe has taken over the electric highway network, it has actually done a much, much better job. It plans to add more than 150 ultra-rapid chargers this year. I think we heard from the CEO yesterday. Very positive, very bullish. So there's nothing to suggest that GridServe will not deliver on their commitment. But even if they do, the government's target will be missed by some distance. In May of 2021, Ofgem announced 130 million of new public funding to deliver grid upgrades that will increase capacity to charging points at service stations. The work is due to be done over the next year and a half, but as things stand, it's going to be an awfully long time until the public benefits from that investment, because there simply won't be enough chargers in place to connect to the grid. None of this is anything negative against GridServe, as I say, quite the opposite. GridServe recently offered to drop its exclusivity rights around the 2/3 of the motorway service stations. So again, can only have positive things to say about these guys. Local authority installed charge points. More than £1 billion was allocated in the last budget to boost electric car charging and manufacturing. £620 million of this was allocated for public charging in residential areas and plug-in vehicle grants. But more than half of the councils actually spent nothing on installing chargers for electric vehicles in the last year, which I find staggering. Device Pilot, which monitors and manages charging points, used Freedom of Information requests to ask 374 councils about their strategies to cater for electric vehicles. 216 councils, representing about 60% of the total population, revealed that just 48% of local authorities had invested in charging facilities in the previous year, despite the record-breaking sales of electric vehicle charging. So this is a real concern. Again, Device Pilot had an analysis that local councils received £34 million of government funding to spend on EV infrastructure, an average of 92,000 each, and a 15% decline on the previous year. So heading in the wrong direction. Cost of installing a charger range from the low end, £350 to £700 for the slowest type that can take several hours to charge, up to as much as maybe £100,000 for the high power chargers, the ultra rapid chargers, which can charge in about 15 to 20 minutes. 6 in 10 councils that actually responded said they received no funding for the government for chargers during the year, and there was huge variations around that. The challenge for the slower chargers, the 7 and 22 kilowatt chargers, will be a financial challenge. If you assume they're going to be used, let's assume they're going to be used 24 hours round the clock per day, 8,760 hours per year. Let's be generous with a 20 pence kilowatt per hour fee that gets charged. That will generate an income of £1,752 a year. And then you've got to pay for the electricity, the payment processing costs, and installation and maintenance costs. So it will be a financial challenge. As I touched upon an earlier chart, homes and offices will have a part to play. Under changes to the building regulations, all new homes and offices must and those that undergo large-scale renovations, leaving with more than 10 parking spaces, will be required to install electric vehicle charge points. These charge points would also have to deploy smart charging technology to calculate when the best time is for the car to charge, to prevent the national grid being overwhelmed by large numbers of drivers all plugging in their car when they get home from work. Of course, with a problem like this, even if the national grid could cope, we're not building that many new houses in the UK. And would the DNOs actually work with us in terms of what we're trying to do here? So again, heard the word collaboration a lot over the last day or so, and that's vital here. In terms of offices and homes, here you can look at to try and relieve some of the impact on the grid. You can get your solar panels up there. You can have a battery storage unit, which will choose to harvest from the grid, will choose to take energy from the solar panels, coupled with some smart software, will decide as and when they use that electricity to either charge the car or heat the house. And again, software is important in this, and it was great to hear Connor talking about the software these guys have developed, because I think software, we've talked a lot about hardware, but software has a real part to play in all of this. Now, another way of looking at it, we've talked about the shortage of chargers and how difficult it is to find a charger when you need it. Just maybe something to turn this on its head and give you something to think about is, what about taking the charge to the car as opposed to the car to the charger? So we have mobile charging units. So just like we regularly call up for a pepperoni pizza, you know, as a bridging mechanism to get to a fully installed infrastructure. Is there a time and a place for calling up someone to come and charge your car for you? Or for recovery companies like RAC and others, if you're driving your car, you've run out of charge, the answer is not the jerry can anymore. You can't just use that. So you can call a recovery company that will come, gives you a little bit of charge to allow you to get to the next charge point. So just another way of looking at it to help us get to the stage where we can actually have a fully functional infrastructure in place. Another way of looking at the charging as a service, so instead of the portable unit, you could also envisage taking a battery storage container, which has ultra-fast charging units attached to it, and almost using that as a drop-in service. Maybe hotels might have a value for that, or hospitality events. We're working with Fleet Eye on telemetry, some nice telemetry stuff that would be able to tell you, okay, that drop-in charging unit now needs to be picked up because it needs to be recharged, taken away, and you bring another one. Is there again, so you avoid the need for all of the civils. It's not a permanent, it's a temporary, as and when needed. Is there a time and a place for that? I'm conscious of the time, so again, I'm going to mention software because I do think it is important. I think the software will help the system make clever decisions. The smart guys in our company is also already looking at, we've got payment systems in place, but would there be an opportunity to look at cryptocurrency in all of this? Not today, but further down the line. So I do think software as well as hardware has a big part to play in navigating us through this journey. And this one, I'll just leave you to look at how I think all of this technology comes together. So we spoke a lot about charging units and infrastructure and hardware, but I do think there's a lot more to it. And I would just like to leave you with that thought, because the more people thinking about it, the more smart people thinking about it, the better I think we'll find a use for it. So, Alex, back to you.
John, thank you very much. And perhaps I can just combine two questions that we've had from our audience just to allow you to try to address them. What is about the optimal ratio of chargers to cars in the EV future, comparing us to a sort of 8,500 ICE fuel stations at the moment, the 35 million cars on the road? What's your view on the optimal ratio? Linked to that, do you believe people will abandon destination chargers completely is the question. People won't queue for 7 kilowatt chargers is the contention there. Your quick thoughts on both of those would be great.
So my personal opinion is people will abandon the 7 kilowatt chargers. I think people's time demands will dictate that they no longer have a time and place in the infrastructure. 22 kilowatts potentially for the home market, but everything will be driven towards the rapid and ultra rapid, in my opinion. What was the first question, Alex? Sorry.
The ratio of cars to charge points that we need in an EV ecosystem.
So I can't actually answer that question without knowing the type of charging points we have in place. So we will need a lot more if we're sitting with 7 and 22 kilowatt chargers than if we're sitting with 100 and 350 type kilowatt per hour chargers. So it's a difficult question. You can answer it when you actually know what kind of chargers you have in place.
Perfect. Thank you, John, and very interesting presentation. Much appreciated. And for our audience, we'll take the usual 20 to 30 second break now and just transition to our last technology presentation in a few seconds.
Thank you, Alex.